Yeah.
Because it has a logo. So I'm trying to
yeah, this one is probably like, the uniform that kind of.
No, I don't know. We haven't. I don't want to see no more scores. No, I don't know if they have them in cookies yet because they just changed the color to a purple shirt, and I was gonna have the logo, and I didn't see no purple shirts anywhere. And the school is gonna sell them to us directly, but because they're trying to make a profit, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive. So I'm just trying to see, maybe get one from the school and look at it, and then try to see if I can, find, because it's too much.
It's good people find out when Leslie used to go to Catholic school. I used to go to Brittany all the time.
Nah, but they go to public school, so I don't know.
Oh, right, it's different.
Yeah, so I don't know. I gotta find out. I gotta wait till school starts to see what's the deal with the shirts. Because it's just, we got too many kids and we paying $15 for like 4 shirts for each kid, and it's a fortune.
Okay. Alright, so I think Eddie's got us up. Alright, who else did what for holidays? Any holiday plans, anything? Shopping.
I enjoyed my swimming.
Yeah, we did just swimming all the way out there in Jersey Shore. It was pretty cool. It was nice.
I didn't want to go initially too far out because I was like, it's probably way deep out there, and I kept walking, and I'm like, oh, it's not that deep. Then we saw dolphins. That was cool.
Yeah, it was good. I had a good time. It wasn't as crowded as I thought it would be. You know what I mean? I thought it was like
Everybody went to Coney Island.
Is that where they went? Because it was like, I was thinking it was going to be a whole lot more hustle and bustle, but it really wasn't that bad. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I wasn't looking to get into the crazy mode there, but it was good. I had a good time. So I got to see some dolphins, right? In the water. That was pretty cool. Yeah. It was like, you see them popping up out the water and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Well, I was in the sand, so.
It was too far away.
Yeah.
You only saw the fin come up, then I kept saying, where? We're like over there.
I think they were gone, and then I was still looking for them.
They were right near the guy's boat.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're gonna get started. We are going to begin. Class will be a little short today, only because we don't have the first class. So I'm just gonna do my class, and then I'm going to go see my granddaughter for the first time. So got a trip ahead of me there. Go say hello over there. Yeah, I was not feeling too good under the weather. I was a little under the weather, so I didn't want to go and visit her. And obviously the newborns don't get their shots and all that stuff. So she went for her first.
From the picture, she looks more like Eddie.
Yeah.
She got his eyes and she got the big eyes out here.
Yeah.
That little color,
They're all crazy over there. They're all excited.
They had a baby here in New York?
Huh?
They had a baby in New York?
In Manhattan.
I didn't know.
In Manhattan, and then they sent her, now that, you kind of have a child that sends you out immediately, practically. They're like, all right, thank you, bye. See ya.
You got the kid ready to go, get out.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
Gonna head up that way. So.
She's beautiful, God bless her.
Yeah. She was, I think she's walking already. Alright guys, we're gonna get going. We're gonna get started here, so let's just open up in prayer. Father, Lord, we just thank you, my God, for just allowing us, my God, to be here in your presence, my God. We thank you, Father, Lord, for just all the disciples that are here, my God, that are, my God, just coming here just to be in your midst, my God, that you would challenge us, that you would grow us, my God, you continue, my God, to get us to reflect, Father, Lord, more and more, my God. I just thank you, Father, Lord, for just all that you do, Father, Lord, in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Praise God. All right, I always ask every week just to kind of get a sense of where we are with everybody and where, what chapter is everyone up to. What chapter are we up to? Let's see. Church? No. Yeah, we're up to 9, right? Okay, chapter 9. So who's up to chapter 9 up until this point? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, chapter 9. Okay. All right. Amen. So guys, we're up to chapter 9. This is principle 5, which is embracing grieving and loss. Embracing grieving and loss. So I want us just to kind of just go around and just, I try to do this just because, again, as you go through, sometimes there's things that stand out for you and things that you might have read or things that just, the Lord just might kind of tug at you in a certain direction relating to the things that we're going through the material. So I just want you to kind of just share with us just maybe one thing that might have stood out for you. And again, it doesn't have to be about this chapter, but just about in general, just anything that might have stood out for you in the process of going through this class. Amen. So you guys can just take a moment and just share, each of us. It helps us, it grows us, it edifies us, and it encourages us. Anyone can be here. Not all at the same time. Amen. I feel the funny today. These are the days that I get sent to the detention center in class. Did I go down to see the dean?
Can I share two quotes?
Yeah, go for it.
I like in chapter 8 that, it talks about setting up boundaries, because that was something I struggled with. And then, even though, we feel we're limited in certain things that we're able to do, that God will use that within us to stretch us. And then in chapter 9, where it talks about forgiveness, it's not superficially that you do it, you have to do it from the core of your heart. So that's what I got up to.
Amen. Praise God. Boundaries. Okay. Many people do struggle with that, being able to put that limit of knowing, okay, how much is how much and when is when.
I was gonna say the same thing as her, because I'm like up to 8 and a quarter in chapter 8, and I was reading about that, and I like the part where he talks about Jesus and his limits and the spiritual warfare, and how he lived actually on earth for 30 years before he actually started his ministry, and he was human, and kind of seeing it that way is kind of like, okay, it's like a different perspective on God, and kind of relating that to because to me, like growing up in church, it was like God, I mean, he is those things, the beginning and the end and all that stuff, but it was just like he was like, ooh, he was untouchable, like, oh my gosh. And it's like we kind of missed the point that he was on earth and he was human also. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that he had a lot of things that he probably struggled with to a degree, I guess, that made him human. And then he talks about how in the other part where he said something about when he was in the desert, I think, and that's when like he really had to like resist temptation. That's when he really started acting upon his godliness, I guess. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of cool.
Right, and I thought what was also cool in that same section there, it's like when you look at it, it goes and it shows that he didn't go and try to reach the entire world. He knew that I came for this specific, and he deposited it into 12, and from the 12 he was counting that it would eventually grow to where it needs to, which again, it gives us the confinement of limitation. And again, sometimes we pour upon ourselves more than we need to, and this is where, especially in our society today, we get overburdened, we get stressed out, we have so many people on so many medications and all that stuff, just because we try to do so much when we're really not called. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that definitely, I can relate to that in a big way as well. You know what I mean? But I agree. Thank you. Amen.
Yeah, that's right. And she says, how you put it about oh my God, what was that you would say, Deacon?
Boundaries?
About the boundaries.
About the boundaries. Sometimes, we gotta learn how to have to set boundaries because sometimes people would step over, you know. And I noticed that I was like reading this book. Okay, that part right there, I saw myself in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my God.
Yeah.
No. So that right there was saying, so I'm saying that is the thing that I have to start setting boundaries.
Right.
That's one. And then the other one is about the forgiveness. The forgiveness, like it says here, forgiveness, you don't just say, okay, I forgive you.
Right.
You know, it's a thing that you need to really, really, you know, just study it, you know, pray on it, and see where it goes before you say, you know, okay, I forgive you. Because really, really, you should say anybody there, I forgive you, doesn't mean that you have forgiven. Because you still have a part of heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and I think that, you know, all of these are important, guys. You know, I think the one that probably stood out, bless you, was the bridge story. Remember the bridge story? And I think that sometimes as pastors, you know, sometimes we get to feel that way, that, you know, here you are going to, you know, your life, your destiny and stuff like that, and somebody puts the rope in your hand and say, hey, hold on a moment, and they jump over the bridge and they're like wanting you to hold on, and, you know, and sometimes you just feel like, you know, you got to also know when is enough to put responsibility in the hands of others, because if not, there's moments in time they'll keep you there hanging on, and it's not us knowing where these boundaries begin and where boundaries end. And sometimes in us feeling like we're parents and us feeling like we're children of parents and, you know, so forth and so forth, there's sometimes these relationships that sometimes we many times do more than what we're called to. And we feel overwhelmed because we feel a sense of responsibility holding those ropes when sometimes people are just, you know, living frivolously, and then we're feeling somewhat responsible. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's their choices, you know, and we gotta understand that sometimes, hey, you got the option to come back up over the rope and come back in, and I'm not taking responsibility for that no more. You know what I mean? And sometimes we gotta know where the boundary ends and where it begins, and sometimes it's difficult to know where that starts and where it ends. You know.
I'm always blessed by the chapter 7, living with witness to vulnerability. The segment where it says we need to embrace our whole humanity. Oh man, that, you know, when I first few years walked with the Lord, I don't know, I kind of felt like first coming to the church, especially when I became one of the pastors here, I kind of felt like in the church I had to wear one hat, and then outside I had to wear another. And I didn't know how to just be me, and not even so much let the two merge, but just be me. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to just be okay with who I was, you know, weaknesses, strengths, and all, which is really what true humility is. It's just knowing where you are. You know, having a confident and a good self-assessment about yourself. You know, for me, it was just always, you know, that fear of letting people down, that fear of not being right, that fear of not being perfect, that fear of what will they say, you know, not knowing how to just embrace. I apologize.
That's cool.
I didn't know how to just embrace. It was real easy to embrace the strengths. That was the biggest.
Right.
The weaknesses part was, yeah.
Right.
That was the challenge, and then the flip side to that is then now the strengths. You have to be careful with those too because you get a big head.
Absolutely.
Okay, you know, who wants to walk around with a big head? It just doesn't feel good. You know, everybody's kind of like looking at you sideways, like,
Right,
now
right,
that you're
right,
out
right.
here.
Absolutely.
You know, and so just the whole pride and being overly confident, not really having a sense of, well, you know, like honestly, I am who I am because God is God. He made me this way, and He's the only one who's God, and I'm not. You know, so like relax.
Right.
And just kind of like go with the flow. I didn't know. I was always tense and uptight and just rigid. I didn't know how to just relax. I didn't know how to, sometimes I even felt guilty laughing too much.
Right.
I used to feel like if I laughed too much that people wouldn't take me seriously or they'd disrespect me.
Right.
You know, and so that would make it then now my issue as opposed to it being theirs, maybe for their lack of, you know, respect, authority or whatever. It's not, you know, and so to risk feeling that slight that comes from the disrespect, I couldn't risk it. It was just too devastating for me because my value was tied to that.
Right.
Okay, and so learning how to separate from all that and just embrace who I am, shortcomings, and the whole nine, knowing that the shortcomings is what I learned, and you know, to chill out with the big head because if it was not for God, I wouldn't have anything. I wouldn't even be here. You know, learning how to find balance in that and learning how to just relax, how to laugh, how to breathe, joke, beat myself,
Right.
chill, and it was okay.
Sure.
So it's taken me what, almost 13 years to get here?
Amen.
Big struggle?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff tied to that. I mean,
Right.
listen, Brent, codependency, you know, fear of rejection, you know, fear of not knowing how to love without fear, you know, not knowing how to set boundaries, not knowing how to be vulnerable. I mean, just so many different like branches come out of that whole thing. You know, so okay, that's it.
Amen. And you know, again, just to piggyback on that, and that's part of what this book is about, guys, is being able to understand that we do have to look at all the pieces that we have to look at within ourselves. You know, sometimes our biggest strength is to be able to walk in that brokenness and vulnerability, is to be able to go and say, hey, I don't have it all together. I don't have all the strengths. I don't have, because then what happens is that at that point, you begin to set aside pride and you begin to start understanding a stronger dependency on the Lord. And that's really what this book is really all about. It's learning to be able to be in tune of what your inner you is saying, what your life is walking out.
And now we talked about the pride. I talked about the big head of being weak. Now, you go too high, that's pride. If you go too low, that's pride too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're walking around with the whole I'm a worm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That's pride too.
Right.
I don't realize that. Well, some people, they call it, well, the word calls it having a false humility, where you're kind of, you put on this kind of like front, like self-pity, self-condemnation, self-hatred, self-rejection, when you're walking around in constant hopelessness and despair, afraid of failure, afraid of correction, afraid of being imperfect. All those things revolve around codependency. It revolves around false humility. And so God is like, you need to find an even balance where you are. Just accept yourself for who you are. We like Psalm 139 is perfect because it just talks about that. God knitting you in His womb and everything, weaknesses and failures and strengths, all of that comes together with how God made you. Just being able to embrace that entire balance. If you go too low, I'm a worm, I'm no good. It's kind of like an introspection.
Right.
A constant self-introspection. And introspection is good until it crosses the line and now you're devastating yourself. You feel horrible because you didn't get everything right. And then it goes on a whole new other level. You're scrutinizing yourself. It's just really, really bad. So it's being with God and finding a balance of both areas, knowing that all of these things, weaknesses and strengths, totally encapsulate who you are.
Right.
And being comfortable with that.
Absolutely. And that's the proper balance, having a proper balance and all of that. For those of you that came in, what we're basically doing is just anything that might have stood out for you, preferably in the chapter that we're on now, which is chapter 9, principle 5, embracing grief and loss. But if you're not up to that chapter, just anything in general that has stood out for you in the book. And I kind of ask this question every week just because I want you to kind of keep, again, digesting. Sometimes the Lord shows you something differently. Sometimes the Lord shows you, something a little bit more. So anything that you would like to share that, again, would be something that stood out for you so far in reading the book at this point. Somebody else can do it, right?
No, yeah, my sister.
Oh, okay, cool.
I guess for me it's constantly having to admit my emotions, like confess that it's okay to be human. When I was reading it, how he was explaining how like the woman who had law, like when she came to the Philippines and was there for 10 years trying to get her kids to come in. And when she finally got her kids to come in, one by one they were dying out. Like, and the fact that she can, instead of taking that loss and staying in that place of sadness, she said, there's a way for her to be able to understand when other people are grieving, how she can comfort those, because she herself has experienced the loss of having the loved ones that she considers so dear to her, how she lost her children, a lot of her kids, and she can relate to it, and she can use that before the kingdom of God, trying to get people in just because you can show the compassion. And having to, when I was hearing that, I realized that I can actually help people in certain aspects of what they're going through, because I've been through this. I'm going through certain things, so I can, instead of having that place of being woe is me, I can bring it over and use it for good in terms of comforting others, because I've been through it.
Absolutely, absolutely, I appreciate that, yeah. And that's kind of really this chapter that we're going to be talking about today. It really is very important that what you just finished saying, because that's what we got to dig in to get to that place. But,
So I have one comment to make, and then I have a question.
Sure.
On page 142, on the third full paragraph, I didn't know that an obstacle is something that we can receive as a gift. That's like, I never heard of that before. I always thought an obstacle is something you have to overcome.
I'm sorry, can you just say it one more time? I was trying to find the page.
Page 142, the third paragraph, the second to last sentence. There, it said that he saw limits as an obstacle to overcome and not a gift to receive. I didn't know that an obstacle could never be a gift. I always thought an obstacle was something we had to overcome, we had to get rid of. He's saying that, I understand what he's saying, but it's just like a light that went off. I never saw it like that before.
Okay, you're talking about that life's, with the, you said the second to the last paragraph?
I'm sorry, no, the third paragraph, the second to last sentence. Right here. Where it says, lastly, so limits as an obstacle to overcome.
Page 142, right?
142, third full paragraph.
1, 2, 3, 4, where it says it is critical.
No, the third full paragraph, the second to last sentence, it starts lastly, so limits.
Hold on, let me get to you. Oh, you know why I don't see it on mine? Because I got an old version. You guys got a newer version. That's why. Don't forget. Say what it says on yours.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, oh no, don't make it. What is that?
Yeah, it's just that the writer was saying that, that obstacles sometimes can be a gift. I never saw it as that. I always thought it's something that we had to get rid of, we had to overcome, get rid of it and move on. And he's saying that an obstacle is sometimes a gift that God gives to you.
Right.
And then to piggyback on that, I have a question. I don't know if you're going to find that. 145, the first paragraph. The frightening truth is we can sometimes pass through our God-given limits and end up with God's word without God. What does that mean?
Say that one more last part again.
The frightening truth is we can sometimes pass through our God-given limits and end up with God's word without God.
Sometimes we can pass through
That's
our
the
God-given.
part that says that sometimes we can go past God's overextend ourselves to the point of exhaustion and stress, and then where we forget that we have to seek upon God to kind of be that strength in us to be able to overcome things, but at the same time, knowing what our limits are. You know, so if you know that if, like, for example, like if I'm a helper, I like to help, but then I have an issue with boundary where I can never say no, you know, then I'm kind of overextending myself, and at the same time, I'm not really thinking about, I guess, God in that way, because now I'm like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna help everybody, at the same time, like, I'm burning out, even though God called me to be someone, you know, to help, that's what I like to do, but then it's like, I'm surpassing my limits. That's what I understood from that.
Okay, did you want to share?
Yeah, but it's that, I believe that, I receive that. I kind of feel that in another scenario, it would be also a control issue. Sometimes we, you know, we're not allowing God to kind of like work out a situation, and so rather than have an Isaac, we have 20 Ishmaels running around, if that makes any sense. We kind of like get into some situations, and rather than just God let rest and let God kind of like work certain things out, knowing his part, knowing our part, we're kind of like in the mix trying to make things happen.
But then what's confusing to me is then that's not God's work. Yeah, God's work, you know, and say our God and end up doing God's work without God. How can you do God's work without God? That's my
and I'll piggyback on what the question you're asking. There's a lot of moments at times where, and when we look at it again, and that it might have been the chapter on brokenness and vulnerability. I'm not sure if that's the chapter that was.
Chapter 8. I didn't know you got
Chapter 8. Okay. But what happens in a lot of cases is that sometimes you got a lot of people that their motivation and what they do is not always God-centered or God-focused. So sometimes you have a lot of people problem-solving their own problems. You have a lot of people sometimes doing agendas that they do. And God is not in the midst. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I remember one day going to a conference in Philadelphia, and there was a doctor that was speaking there. And one of the things that he had said that really was a profound statement to me, he says, there are many pastors that at times are using ministry to rehab their life. And what I mean by that is that and it stuck with me because at that time I happened to be going to a church where the youth pastor, that fit perfectly with the comment that he was saying, because this youth pastor grew up in a broken home. So family life for him was not, it was not modeled, because there wasn't a mother and a father, and family life was not there, and they didn't do things together as family. So for him, he turned around and he was broken about that in his life. He had that as an absence or as a failure there. So he was then running the youth ministry, and he was always constantly getting a lot of riff because the parents, he would use moments of times which were Mother's Day, Father's Day, to go and do these trips to great adventures, to go do these outings. And his mentality was, well, there's kids that don't have parents, so we want them to feel a sense of family being at youth group that day. But then what he was also doing was he was then now creating a situation where you were creating broken relationships at home, because then now in catering to whoever that you were trying to cater, you're also breaking another side of the fence here. And you almost found him a lot of the times trying to create that sense of family with the ministry. So now at that point, though the work looked good from the outside, was it really about the work and it was really about God? Or was it really the motive driving the force? Was it really about him feeling a sense of family through the youth? You see what I mean? So now you have, or what that other doctor was talking about over there, is sometimes you have different people that are their motives and their motivation. Sometimes it has nothing to do with God at all. And even though the work looks good, but their motivation had nothing to do with God. So in a case like that, there could be moments and times where you could have people going in directions and the motive totally not even be God focused.
But then again, Apostle, it begs the question I'm asking here. It says, end up doing God's work. Again, so would that be seen as God's work? That's my because he's saying doing God's work without God. So is that God's work since the motive is like
right?
Godly?
Right. Well, the phraseology that he's using is God's work, but when he's looking at the analysis of it, is doing it without God. So then, theoretically speaking, if we were to say it correctly, it wouldn't be God's work.
Okay.
You see what I mean? It wouldn't be God's work. But it would be perceived as God's work because everybody looking will, the onlooker will say, wow, that's a great work of God. But sometimes you have some great works of God that perceptively are quote unquote great works of God, but God is not in it.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So that's the idea there. And funny enough, there's a book by the name of Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is that if we want to see an awesome move of God, and here's again where a lot of pastors fall into this pitfall. We turn around, we create these plans, these ideas, these agendas, and then we come to God and say, God, we want you to bless it. Right? And the point that he was making is, why don't we just find out where God is moving and what he wants to do and just be there because the work is already blessed. You see what I mean? And that's two mentalities there. And that's what happens is a lot of the time, sometimes we could be many times caught up in things that we're thinking we're on target, but we're missing the mark in a big way. So then you're right that would it be work of God? Sometimes it's not. It really is not. Okay. Amen. Which leads us into our subject for today, which is embracing grieving and loss. You know, we live in a very diversified city. We live in a very congested city. We live in a city where if you walk down one block or two in New York City, you will see it all. Okay, you'll see it all. But before I do that, let me just, if you can share what we were doing, because everybody got a chance to share and then hear from you. But we were saying if there was anything in the book in this chapter that we read, which is chapter 9, or if you didn't get to read chapter 9, any other chapters that might have stood out for you at this point, up until this point?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't feeling well, and then I was away, so I finished chapter 7.
Okay.
And the thing that I find interesting, how he has the portrayal of the prodigal son that comes back broken, and the father's so willing to accept him, and this is my son, and he clothes him and he bathes him, and then there's the brother. You know, I've been here all the time, Dad. You never did this for me, type thing. I find that happens a lot, not only in families, but it happens in churches too. How come she gets acknowledged? You know, why does Pastor do such and such with such and such, and not me? You know, what do you have that's so magnetic? And I just found it interesting that the only way you really get to the Father is that place of brokenness. When you acknowledge you're nothing. You know, I may have gone through things, I'm still going through. I am not perfect. I struggle with anger towards my granddaughter who's only 4 years old because of stuff from the back. So I need to get down on my knees and ask God to just be there for me because I'm still fixing Jeanette. You know, Jeanette is very broken. And that's the only way. I honestly find that people that are humble touch me the most. Because I know there are people that have giftings, but when they have this sense of like, I'm it, I just kind of shut that down. Sure. And I am just praying that, God uses me in that way so that I don't see myself or my giftings, whatever he gives me, as anything great, but just simply because Daddy put it there.
Amen. Amen. And that typifies that story exactly. Because again, when you look at it, the one that was the modeled, one that's been there all the time, that was the one that shows the correct way and being there and never left Dad or whatever, he was the one that probably had the wrong heart condition. And then the one that looked like the wrecked up one was the one that, really probably was more in a repentant state of heart. You know what I mean? So again, it's to come to that place within ourselves that we can truly see things for what they are. This chapter kind of is going to go a little bit further into that. We talked in the other ones about living in that place of brokenness and vulnerability, being in tune with those places in us. And part of that, following through along with that, is also understanding that we've experienced things in life that we've never taken out the time to grieve. We've experienced losses in life that sometimes we haven't really looked at how did the loss of that today molded me? How does it still move me, and how does it still implicate some of my ways of being and my personality in being? And we grow up in a city where, again, part of the model or part of the culture is that we gotta be tough. You are a New Yorker. We around the world, we're like the tough people. You know what I mean? And to a certain degree, that's something that can be damaging to us, because if we're always feeling like we gotta have on our cape and have on our bulletproof vest and nothing ever affects us in life, we don't practice the discipline of sitting down and just meditating and realizing, how does something impact me? How did each situation, get to us? You know what I mean? And when we look at the years of life that we've lived, if that's what we've modeled, okay, then we have to be able to. Jen, can you bring that one just a little bit? Because I'm getting a little feedback on the board, just slightly. It's a little bit. So when we look at that situation, then now what ends up happening is we now might be in a place where we have so many things that kind of got to us. So for instance, let's say if we were children of divorce, if we were children of molestation, if we were children of, whatever, different things that we've gone through in life, have we taken out the time to realize, how did this one situation affect me? How did this other situation, did I take our time to stop and grieve that dad left us when we were kids, and now it made me feel some type way, and maybe today, because I feel that type way, I don't believe in relationships, I don't believe in a man, I don't believe, I'm scared of financial instability because the divorce created this disruption financially for us. You see what I mean? We go through so many things in our day-to-day life growing up that sometimes we don't realize. If one of our children went away to college, how is the absence of that child no longer being in the home, how is that affecting? If we felt in the back of our mind we wanted to have a certain type of relationship with our children, and that didn't manifest that way, the image of that idea that I've created of what I wanted that mother-son, mother-daughter relationship to look like, and it doesn't look like that today, how does that affected me? You get what I'm trying to say? So what happens is many times, we may have a grandparent that was the imparter in our life and was there, that created some level of security to us, passed away and no longer is there. And how does that touch me? How did that impact me? How did that affect me today? And we really don't take out the time to do these things. And just like if you're trying to build muscle, you go to the gym, you work out a certain muscle, right? So same thing is here. How many times do we internally work out those muscles of health inside of us, that we can look at each of these situations and realize, how did it affect me? How did it impact me? Okay? And many times we don't really stop to look at these things, but yet they create in us a direction or a path of behavior, a direction or a path of perspective, that now we were this way in perspective, but because that incident happened, that changed the path in a different direction.
But how about when you're more in the situation, you acknowledge it's there, but you don't know how to correct it?
Right, and that's part of the problem, is that sometimes there are certain situations that we may not even be powered enough to correct. Some of the situations is just learning how to I just accept the situation. So for instance, I'm using example, divorce is a common situation, okay, and we can go into a little specific if need be. But divorce is one. A lot of kids come up as children of divorce. And sometimes children put themselves in those situations where they feel they had to fix the problem that was happening between the two adults, which really they didn't have. They were powerless to be able to do that. Or sometimes kids themselves find themselves feeling like they were the fault of a divorce. So sometimes they go around through life, and this is part of, again, processing, Did I grow up in a situation where I felt it was because of me my parents broke up? And now you may walk around with guilt, and you may walk around with shame, and you may walk around with some bitterness and hurt or whatever. And sometimes there's things that we just have to realize that we have to just embrace and grieve the fact that those two parents were no longer. I have to embrace the fact that I am that child that came from a broken home, and grieve the loss of that reality, and begin to check, where is my mindset, my attitude, my heart conditions in all of this? Did I grow angry? Did I grow bitter? Did I grow upset? Did I stop believing in the institution of marriage? Did I stop believing in the institution of mom? Did I stop believing in the institution of dad? Do I now hate dad because he's no longer there? Because, you see what I'm trying to say? Like, one incident, you can have 5 children, and all of those 5 children totally have a different reality of what happened in that same one situation. You see, and we have went through a lot of stimuluses in our lives, a lot of things in our lives. So, you know, when we look at devastating losses, I'll throw some of them out there, so again, you can begin to think about that. Do we take our time to really stop to think about how these things impact us? The death of a child or a spouse or a family member or a friend. You know, how many of us have ever experienced like someone really close to us that died or passed away, or, you know, in some real negative light, or some just natural way of, you know, so all of us have, you know, have we taken our time to stop to say, you know, how did, you know, losing Grandpa Joe affect me? How did losing Grandpa, you know, Maria, you know, and go through the line and realize how has things impacted us. And sometimes we're walking around with very unsettled things within ourselves that we kind of either have some distortions with or not. But here's a couple of other ones. Devastating losses. Mental or physical disabilities. Today, one of the ones that's a common one is the Alzheimer's. You know, we had healthy parents, and then all of a sudden, man, they just swiped out from under us. How does that impact us? How does that make us feel? Some will deal with that reality and deal with it with shame. Oh my God, I'm shameful. I feel shame that my father or my mother no longer can remember, you know, so we deal with it feeling, you know, somehow guilt, you know, whatever. So everybody deals with it differently. You see what I mean? And some are empathetic. So again, we have to begin to realize how these things. Some of us are divorced. How about loss of a job, spousal infidelity, cancer, disease, or illness, okay? Infertility, suicide in the family, stillbirth or miscarriage, shattering of a lifelong dream, rejection for a promotion or from a school, church moves to a new building, having a child, and you can't do the things that you used to do, getting married, children moving out of the house, entering into the old age. You see, when you realize a lot of these things, you can have different things happen at different stages in your life that somehow begin to shift you in directions. You know, if you have a parent that has their 2 children, and those 2 children now move out because they became adults, you know, am I now plagued with fear of feeling alone? So does now that consume me? Does that overtake my thinking? Okay? Elderly, the same way. You know, do I now have this fear of getting older? You know what I mean? The loss of my youth. Do I stop to take out time to grieve those realities and embrace the losses that now, as my life takes different seasons? A close friend or a child gets married. Friends move away. Small group multiplies. Pastor joins or leaves the staff. A faithful pet dies. Retired from work, transferring from one school or job to another. You know, and sometimes what happens is we go through life experiencing so many different things that we don't even stop to think about things. We just, okay, that happened, boom, keep it moving and go to the next thing in life. And we don't realize that each thing that happens can be a potential of somehow affecting us or impacting our views, our perspectives, our feelings. And because we're so busy being strong and we're so busy being, nothing affects me, that sometimes we don't really stop to take a look. And sometimes what ends up happening is we end up coming into our marriages, and we come into those marriages with all this different baggage, and we affect that. Sometimes we come into parenting, and we come in with all the baggages, and we affect that. You see? So what ends up happening is that, if you grew up in a home where, dad was a womanizer, and now you come and you enter into a relationship, now you're probably putting that new person on the 5th degree on everything under the sun, because your fear of whatever dad did is what you're now going into some fear with. You see what I mean? So at that point, hold on 1 second. So what ends up happening is that we now go and we have to stop to take a look. And this is what Peter basically is talking about. In order for you to be able to mature and grow in spiritual health, is to be able to take a look at all of the different measures of all these different things. Can I live a life of brokenness? Can I live a life of being vulnerable? Or am I in the midst of admitting my fears, my anxieties, my shortfalls, whatever? Am I somehow going to think that that's a projection of me being weak? No, weak is the one that doesn't look at those things. Strong is the person that can say, yeah, I know I have these fears. Because that's the person that can say, I know what I know about me. The person that's trying to fake the funk and present this other imagery is the one that will struggle to be real. But what's funny about it is that everybody else can see it, but that person can't. Because somehow their self-esteem won't allow them. Their pride won't allow them. So they have to present to everyone, I am the one that got it all together. They're like the guy from the Wizard of Oz pull the curtain back, trying to make the impression, don't look at the guy behind the curtain. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's how we live life, trying to make this impression that we're the Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter, everybody knows better. They done already brung your curtain back a long time ago. They're like, we know you're that short little guy. Okay? You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter is that we have to get to the point where for us to be able to grow spiritually, to grow emotionally, to be able to go and develop, is to be honest with ourselves. Is to be able to go and say, these are the things that I am afraid about. These are the things that do fear me. These are the things that do get me upset. And then when you begin to take that journey, like Peter talks about, going underneath the surface of your life, going down to the bottom of that iceberg, you'll begin to, visit probably places you've never saw before, maybe the darkest places in your life, maybe the most scariest places in your life. But what happens is that when you finally do your due diligence and do your work there, you're going to thank yourself because you're going to come out a better person. Amen. And the enemy will no longer have a foothold in your life. The enemy loves to work in secrecy. And if he can keep you bondaged up with your fears, with your pains, with your hurts, with all of those things, then he has you. And you feel that you can't go nowhere. What if the pastor really knew me? You see? And when you don't share, then what happens is you stay there. And when you come to realize that when you can be open and you can be vulnerable, you'll be surprised that the pastor go and say, hey, you know what? I had that same struggle too. I had that same challenge too. And this is how I got over it. You see what I mean? And then you begin to start understanding that you find strength in others because there's some others that have been through some of the same similar situations. And now what you guys begin to do is you begin to start blowing up the enemy, because the enemy likes to try to make things look more than what they really are. And when you begin to start realizing, what? You went through that and you had victory. You went through that. You had victory. You went through that and God helped you to change. You now begin to start developing strength and you start believing, oh, I can do it too. Because if God did it for these 10 people, he can surely do it for me. You see what I mean? And this is where we begin to start, doing that. I think one of the great works that I really enjoy seeing is when we do the retreats. And to be able to see the people coming out and speaking their things that they've been through in their life, when they speak about the grief that they've been through and things that they've gone through, when they speak about the pain and the hurt of the losses that they've experienced, whether it's been through going through molestations or whether it's been through whatever the story is, when I share up on the retreat and I talk to other men and I share with them about having been molested and going through the grief and the pain and the journey of struggle with those realities, it begins to break bondages off of these men. 1 out of every 4 women get molested. And the statistic is not so far off from the men. It's 1 out of every 7 men that get molested. So when we begin to share our stories on these weekends, we break the yoke of bondage off of people's lives and they begin to start believing more in a God that changes lives. Because many of them hear about it and it's this nice little fairy tale story in their mind, but some of them don't believe it. But when they begin to see that it happened in many people's lives, then that's when they start believing, well, if it happened to them, it can happen to me too. You see, but when we share in that place and we begin to look at how has things impacted us, is where then we truly begin to break bondages. David was one that David, in a lot of his Psalms, you hear David talking about the stuff, man, that he was able to accept loss. He was able to express grief. So you hear a lot of his when you hear a lot of his Psalms, he almost sounds depressed on some of these, when he goes out there and he's sharing about it. But guess what? Because he was going through those seasons in his life, he was depressed about things that he was going through. But when he was able to come and express and share those things, he was able to go and take people like us today and allow us to be set free because we believe there's hope at the end of the challenge. There is light at the end of the storm. He begins to start expressing, and Job was another one that we hear his story when he was going through all the stuff that he was going through, man. When you read that story, man, Job threw it out there. He was feeling the pain. My friends turned their backs on me. My wife encouraged me in a real bad way. I lost my loved ones, my children. You see, and you begin to start looking. My finances went down the toilet. So what happens is that when you begin to start realizing that we go through things in life that do affect us. So we have to be able to be in tune with these things. To be able to present a different picture to ourselves is to be in self-denial. And self-denial is to walk in a form of hypocrisy. Self-hypocrisy is that we can't be real with us. And at that point, then how do you get out of that place? It's almost like a prison of the mind, a prison of the heart. You see what I mean? And we have to be able to come and say, yeah, I was impacted like this, I was impacted like that. And when we look at David, talking about all of these, these pains, it almost talks about being in the twilight, being taught to lament and pour out our grief. We have to be able to let this stuff out because then it no longer has power over you. We don't take our time to lament. Lament. Thank you. To go and pour out the pains. Yeah, it's okay to cry that I missed that growing up. You get what I mean? We had one of the guys that was on one of the retreats that we just recently had, and he poured out. He lamented on one of our call because he was basically trying to say, I didn't have my dad. I finally bumped into him at an older age, and I was trying to regain this relationship with him. and he went and met with dad, and he went and he tried to bring grandchild over and this and that. And he was so disappointed because it didn't happen. And you can tell he was lamenting and he was pouring out and he was feeling it. But that's okay, you need to pour that out. You need to pour that out. And to the victory of that man, he was able to say, what my dad did with me or didn't do with me, I have not done with my son. And he was able to give a praise report where he was like, another person saw one of the videos that he went with him in Chuck E. Cheese and whatever, and he was able to connect and do stuff with him and his son, that the person was blessed that was the onlooker to see the connection that was going on. And that's what this is all about. It's being able to go and say, it hurt me that dad was not there for me. It pained me that when I wanted to run to my dad to give him a hug, to feel a sense of security as a little boy wanting the affection of my dad, I didn't get it. You see, when he's able to come and be in tune with his grief and be in tune with that loss, he can minister from that place. And when we can be in tune with that and we don't no longer look at that area in our life as a taboo place, but come from a place of, yeah, my life wasn't perfect in all these 5 different ways, but I today understand that where the failure of a natural man, I now have the love of a father that now replaces that love. You get what I'm trying to say? I find some healing in that, but it's not to say that even though I have the love of a father, that there's not still some type of feelings that I feel this type of way. You know, I remember talking to a young woman that she basically struggled with homosexuality, you know, and one of the things that she was always talking about how, you know, I don't need a man. And not needing a man, you know, she basically was going and saying, I'm married to God, and that's all I need. Okay, and conceptually, that sounded nice on the surface, but basically what I went and I said, well, listen, let me explain something to you. I hear what you're telling me, and it sounds really nice, and it's cute. I said, but at the end of the day, I said, there's a part of the scripture that the Bible says that Adam walked with God in the garden. And would you agree with me that if God is with you, he's everything, right? And she said, yeah. And I said that he would fulfill everything, right? And she said, yeah. I said, so why is it in that verse of scripture it went and he said, and I said, well, he was not alone, right? And she said, yeah. I said, well, why is it in the verse of scripture it goes and says that he told them it's not good for a man to be alone when God was with him? And she didn't have an answer. And the point I was trying to explain to her was, I said, God was talking about a relationship of companionship that comes from a woman to a man. I said, and the relationship you have with God is fine, but that's not going to fulfill that natural relationship. And this was a person that was constantly struggling on connecting with people. Many times usurping those relationships that might have been with others. And you know, and this was one of the individuals that very close with my wife, and I said, there's many times I'm fighting with you for the attention of my wife. And I brought the point to say, sometimes we don't take out the time to grieve how we were impacted in the past of something that might have happened to you. And I know that she went through some things in her past. And sometimes we're so quick to go and say, that's not wrong, that's not wrong, that's not wrong, everything's fine. But yet everything about you is saying something different. You see what I mean? And this is what this chapter is basically talking about, is don't be so quick to run, to go and not take a look at what we maybe need to take a look at, and be able to go and come to a place, in that case with that young lady, maybe to go and say, you know what, I was molested, and because I was molested, I do have fear of a man. I do have fear of relation. And it's okay if we can come and be straight about that, then you know that's your journey of healing. And every time I would go and tell her, I said, you know, I'll know you'll be okay when I can see you're healed from this. But she felt there was nothing to be healed about, because she was good. You see, and the truth of the matter is something we're not good. And this is what we have to be able to do, is to go and say, what do I need to take a journey within to change, to look at where something has impacted me, something has affected me, you know. I want to take a quick moment. I'm not going to probably go around to everybody, but if you can share, describe one significant loss that you've experienced in your life and how has it impacted who you are today. If you can think of one significant loss that you've experienced in your life and how has it impacted you today. And this is important, guys, and I appreciate those who sharing. Just because, again, it gets you to realize, hey, I can be in tune that there's some things that have affected me.
This was something that the Lord connected. I had always wondered about, and the Lord finally made a connection with me the other day, a few weeks ago. So growing up, and this is always hard because my mom is here. Like you figure 10,000 retreats. It's always easy to share with your family and your mama. So growing up, I had my grandma, my mother's mom, who was like the nucleus of the family. Very angry, very confident in like who she was. Like she just didn't take no shorts. She was a jagged edge. So she, a lot of the times when I was growing up, I think that because she didn't have a childhood, very, you know, she was like married already at the age of 14 and already having kids, 15, 16 years old. You know, she just grew very angry, deprived of a lot of things, and so I think that for her whole life was just about survival mode. And so my growing up, being the youngest of me and two other cousins, she tried to keep me in check by way of anger. And so a lot of that aggression caused me to kind of like, it wasn't easy for me to express myself. I was very submissive. And so one of the things that came out of that was, in growing up and how I found that out was I would express to my mom, you know, I like boys, or I was interested in somebody. I was only 8, 9 years old. I was already like boy crazy, but that's because the boss of my father.
She was gonna get married.
I was gonna get married like at the age of 9. And so, I mean, 9 years old, my first boyfriend, his name was Joey. He was such a cutie. Oh my God. Okay, anyway. And so I went, so already I had gone freely. I mean, I said it to my mom, and she didn't have, you know, a real negative impact on me. But when I brought it to my grandmother, she, again, trying to keep me in check, just the whole anger thing, you know, I'm going to manipulate you into control, and I'm just going to exert this anger because I have to fear you into safety. She didn't know how to love me into safety. She was just too afraid. And so, long story short, I found that I couldn't express myself. I couldn't be honest about those things that I was curious about, things that I was, you know, I really wanted to know about. I wanted to know about boys. I wanted to know about, you know, sex and relationships and love, and these are the things that I was intrigued by. I wanted to know, but my grandmother wasn't really ready to kind of like handle that type of relationship with me. And so it got to a point where anytime that I expressed myself, the backlash, it was always a backlash. It was always screaming, yelling, a slap, calling me names, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, you know. And so what ended up happening was I grew up, and rather than stop doing what I was doing, because that was the initial attempt to control me into good behavior, what was the word? She would, when you're aggressive towards someone, intimidate. She would try to intimidate me into good behavior. I wouldn't stop doing what I was doing. I just became very sneaky, and I began to hide. But I also wasn't expressing myself there, but it was a hiddenness that just went beyond just being sneaky. I was just hidden in expressing myself overall. So I lost my expression, I lost my voice, I lost my honesty, I lost being able to have a genuine, authentic relationship with my grandmother, my family members, or anybody that I was in my family, period. People just all together. And I took that into my relationship with God. So as God has been dealing with me with all these years, anytime that great pain would come to me, I wouldn't know just how to express it to him. I would withdraw. And I would withdraw and stay hidden for days until either the enemy was attacking my mind so bad, or my emotions were so raw because of everything that I was facing, and I didn't know how to bring it to him. Holy Spirit would just keep tugging at me and poking at me and pulling me, come to me, come to me, come to me. And eventually I would just give in. And then when I would give in, it was always with shame. Like I wasn't entitled to those feelings. I was supposed to be strong. I was supposed to be a good, strong Christian. I'm supposed to be, this believer and have faith, and, again, those weaknesses that, you're just ashamed of. And so it would go good for a while, the moment that I break, but then it would be a cycle. The next big pain that would come, I'd go back into withdrawing again. Now is when God is teaching me, he's showing me, he's made such an impact in my heart that I freely come to him now with everything, no matter what pain I'm in, but it took a long time for me to get there. So my loss was my expression, my ability to be human, my curiosity, my voice, all that I just lost it. It's just gone.
Amen. And I just want to say, do you see the reality of stopping to take a look? You are able to identify patterns. You're able to identify behaviors. You're able to identify, how you process things. And you begin to start cleaning up some of those things. Because some of us, we have our go-to ways. We have our go-to mindsets. We have our go-to behaviors that sometimes are not always the right way. You see what I mean? And even when we deal with some realities, some of us, we flee, some of us we fight, some of us, we have different ways of how we process things. And the more you take time to stop, to look, to learn about yourself, the more you're going to grow as a person. Especially if we went and we took the test that we took in the former chapters, where we began to look at, am I emotionally infant, am I emotional, teenager, am I emotional adult? And you begin to sometimes realize that there's developments that we have to develop in there. Some people can't live lives that are vulnerable to be able to grow. Forget about being vulnerable to anyone else. Some people can't be vulnerable to themselves. To be able to really go and say, this hurt me growing up. Because somehow to admit that means that I did have a care for a father. You see what I'm trying to say? And some of us want to feel, I don't need nobody. I can be me by myself. Be myself enough. You know what I mean? And what happens is that, sometimes, God has called us to be able to come and realize that, human contact is important. And the need for love is important. You see what I mean? And when we begin to start looking at things from the right scope of we begin to start having healthier mindsets. We begin to start having healthier attitudes. Okay? Anyone else that wants to share?
For me, I guess, I have a lot of stories. Like, I relate to hers, and being able to express myself. And for me, I think one of the things that really impacted me was when I was pregnant with my first son. Around that time, me and my aunt had a really close relationship, because me and my mother didn't really have a close relationship. Like, she never took the time out to talk to me about certain things, but my aunt did. But I guess when I became pregnant, her expectations for me kind of were like, and there was an incident that happened that I felt as if, she didn't care about me. We were gonna cross the street and there was a car coming up this hill. She didn't tell me it was there. And in my mind, my perception of it was, oh my God, the car was gonna hit me. She didn't say nothing. For a long time, and after that, she didn't really speak to me because she was upset at me at the fact that, she talked so much to me about not doing X, Y, and Z, and I still went and did it. She kind of was like excluded me. And I remember that because of that incident, I held on to a lot of anger and bitterness towards her. you know, and, you know, at first, you know, you kind of, and I was 16 when this, you know, I felt justified, you know, like she's my aunt, she's supposed to love me regardless, you know, she's actually, she do this to me, you know, I had a baby, you know, all this stuff. Then after a while, I saw how it was wearing me thin, you know, in the sense that a lot of my reactions to other situations came from a place of bitterness and anger, and it really kind of pointed to her and my stepfather, actually, people that provoke those emotions in me for a long time. And I remember, you know, probably around the time 17 or 18, that I actually forgave myself, I guess, for letting her down first, because, you know, so much was expected of me or whatever. And then I forgave her because I came to this understanding that she reacted in the way that she thought would be best in some way, or the only way she knew how. And I remember clearly, like, just feeling free from that anger and that bitterness. And that was just like a really eye-opening moment for me as a teenager, because I realized that sometimes when we don't allow ourselves, like you said, to just process things a certain kind of way, and also have that awareness that people process things, you know, from what they think is best, and it kind of just keeps us in this place of like bondage, you know. So that was something that kind of really was like.
Absolutely. You see, and again, guys, they looked, they took time to process some stuff, they got some answers for themselves, and they're still here to talk about it. They're still alive, right? Nobody died yet? No, he's alive. Everybody's good? Okay. It's okay, guys. Sometimes the journey is hard. Sometimes the journey is painful to come to some truths that you may have to admit to yourself on. Okay? But they're still alive. And we need to sometimes face some of these things, because sometimes we need to realize that there's a growing up that has to happen inside here. And we can stay immature and dwarfed in certain areas in us because our fears are gripping us, our anxieties are taking over us. Okay? And what happens is the only one that gets hurt is you. That's it. And sometimes those people that did the hurting, they're living their life free as a bird. And your life gets locked up, bondaged up, with many times dwarfing your development. You get what I'm trying to say? And to a certain degree, it's unfair that they can go onward. And some of us, we may even have to come to points where we can go and say, I am walking angry with so-and-so and bitter with so-and-so. And you may need to forgive so-and-so, not because so-and-so needs forgiving, because you got to release yourself. And you got to be free for yourself. So-and-so may still keep doing what so-and-so is going to keep doing. You can't control that, and you can't own that. But what you can own is the freedom of your soul. What you can own is some space in your brain, some space in your heart, that you can now begin to be a little breathing room in there. Amen. Can I want to share something? Because you got this smirk, and it's a smirk that has a lot to it. So significant loss that you've experienced in your life, and how has it impacted who you are today?
It's impacting me, yeah. I know. Just losing. It's just family. Being divorced. That impacted me worse.
moved me with your sharing. And the reason being is because you typify a lot of people tonight. And I thank you that you were able to talk about what you shared. You know, sometimes people grow old by themselves because of those fears. Sometimes people grow old say some key things. I'm afraid of relationships. I'm afraid of the hurt that can come. And this is the journey about taking the journey of grieving losses, taking the journey of realizing that certain things that may have been way back when can still overtake our life. And my biggest fear would be that something in someone's life can overtake them, that their entire future life begins to be dominated by that one experience or two. And please don't take negative what I'm about to say. I'm just saying it because it's a very common point, but that their lives now will begin to be filled with pets because the pets are safer than humans. And that's a lot of people's reality. That's a lot of people's reality. It's easier to talk to a dog and a cat because I won't get hurt. You understand what I'm saying? And I thank you because you moved me and you've grown in a lot of ways and you blessed me in a big way. And I know you've come a long way. You understand? And your journey's there and it begins with what you just shared today. You know, and you know, and I say that only because I know that there's been moments of time that I've challenged her in certain ways. You know, I know part of her challenge has been with men, and you know, I would always kind of get on her a little bit on, you know, she would say hello and she would say hello like this. And I know that, again, where that came from, and I understood where it came from, and that's why I would challenge her thinking. Because at some point we could stay there and get stuck. And we live a life being stuck. Because we didn't take the time to really stop to see, to find some things for ourselves. Begin to put some concrete, you know, direction for us to get to the other side. And I feel her pain. I feel her pain, you know what I mean? She's been with us for a long time now, and I love her to death, and I know that she's done the journey, you know, and I know some of her biggest fears have been that I've allowed myself to be stuck, and that somehow my stuckness could also affect my children to be stuck. And I think every parent can feel that anxiety, that my stuff will trickle down to someone else. And if I've damaged my reality, that I would not want to damage someone else's reality too. And that's why it's important, guys, to really take the journey. Because we grow, we develop, we allow God to give us perspective, we allow God to bring healing to ourselves. And you know what? It's difficult to do what she just did. She didn't hold back, she put it on the table. This is where my fears are, this is where my challenges are. And that's where true growth begins to happen, where we can be honest with ourselves and throw our inhibitions there, our pains, our hurts, our anxieties, And we begin to be brutally honest with ourselves. I say, yeah, this is where I'm at. This is what I feel. This is where I'm walking. And only then and then only is that then we really allow the Lord to come in and come behind us in our true brokenness and our true vulnerability and allow Him to turn some things around in us and begin to start getting us to be in a different course of life. And I just want to encourage you, Danette, you've come a long way from when you first got here to where you are today. Very different person. And maybe you still have a journey ahead of you, but that's fine. You're not where you used to be. And that's a blessing in and of itself. Your kids have come a long way too. And at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I got my anxieties of my own son. And I walk with my own guilt. My own set of things. And sometimes we just gotta learn to say, Lord, there's things I can't do. There's things I'm trusting you to do. And when we just begin to get to that place, we begin to understand that we don't really have all of the answers where God does. You know, and we just gotta lift up our children and leave them in the hands of the Lord and do all that we can do. And let God complete the work. You know, and just not allow ourselves to give ourselves an exit out, but that we do the hard job of staying in the pocket and allow the Lord to minister to us and heal us and change us and give us new attitudes and give us new perspectives and allow us to get where we gotta go. Because we can make decisions to stay stuck and never challenge ourselves, because it's easy to stay stuck. It's easy to stay stuck. There's a comfort in there. You know? I think we're going to end because I don't want to sweat no more. It's so hot in here. My eyes are sweating. I just wanted to say just the last three phrases that the book talks about, and then we're out of here. One of it talks about the parts of grieving. Is phase one is that we got to pay attention. So sometimes in dealing with different stimuluses that happen to us, we got to pay attention to what moves us, how we are being impacted, how our emotions are going in directions. Phase two, it talks about living in the confusion in between. And the book talks a little bit about when Jesus, you know, when he was crucified to when he resurrected, that in-between place was this place of loneliness, this place of confusion, this place of no answers, this place of, and sometimes we find ourselves into that space in life where we're in that place of in-between. And we have to trust that in that place of in-between, God is doing his greatest work. Because when we didn't see that Jesus with life in his body, the greatest work was being done in the spirit realm at that moment, my sister.
But after the in-between, why do we need time?
Yeah. And in the in-between, that's when it's the most difficult part, because it says that living in the confusing in-between. And being in that in-between place is the most confusing place. Because it's almost when you feel that no solutions are happening. You feel like no answers are coming. You're feeling like, I've done this, I've done that, I've done, but the silence of everything is there. And in there, when you read that chapter, and you'll be blessed when you read that chapter, you'll be able to see that it talks about that this is where, we learn to stand. You know, one of the things is learning how to stretch that place to stand and depend on God to go and do what God knows to do. So when we look at that moment where from the crucifixion to the resurrection, you would almost think that nothing was going on, but in the spiritual realm, something was going on. And even though we're talking about a matter of 3 days in that story, but for some of us, some of the things that we're needing to be in understanding that confusion of the in-between can be longer than that 3-day period. But in there, we learn to lean and depend on God. We learn to, I'll give you an example that the book talks about, and it talks about a lot of different stories in there. One was where one child was murdered. Okay? So imagine for a moment, as a parent, you have your child became murdered. Another one talked about this husband that he lost 3 generations of mother, wife, daughter through the accident of a drunk driver. In one moment, boom, lost 3 loved ones. So when you think about that man, his grief, his loss, his pain, his hurt was more than a 3-day span. And you can only imagine that the confusing in-between place, how must it have been for him? And let's say if he was a believer, wouldn't you question everything about God? Wouldn't you go and say, God, if you were there, God, why did you allow this to happen? God this and God that. Man, you would turn around and you would go into that confusion of the in-between. And phase 3 basically says allowing the old to birth the new. And it's sometimes looking for that confusing place, that lonely place, that place where you're feeling God is not there, where you're feeling that God ain't listening, where you're feeling whatever, letting the old to birth the new. Sometimes we have to go through seasons of certain realities that are very painful, very hurtful, and even still to this day, we still feel some type of way about some things, but God is doing a great work in us through some of these things. And we may not understand those things, and we may not get those things, but we have to know that in the midst of taking our time to sit and think and embrace grieving and to be able to lament and be able to go and look at the losses that we've experienced, that maybe I will have some areas in me that will become stronger, that will become better, that will become brighter, that I will learn to be able to come. Some of us, if it wasn't for tragedies happening, we would have come to Christ. We would have come and we would have prayed. We would have come, if it was because things are going good, we would have come to God. I find most of the time that when people come to the things of the Lord, it's because things ain't working right. Our marriages might be messed up, our children might be messed up, some sickness came upon us, or whatever the story is. And sometimes we have to trust that in the midst of whatever realities God has us in, we have to trust that God has this sovereign plan that sometimes we don't always understand. But we just have to accept it, because sometimes when we look at some of these realities, how do we process certain things? You know, sometimes we want to blame God for everything. We want to look at a whole lot of reality. And you know, the truth of the matter is sometimes God is speaking to us through all different facets of different things. And sometimes they're difficult scenarios and sometimes they're rough scenarios. And I always give the example about Jesus. Everybody wants to be used of the Lord. Use of the Lord. Use me to go do this, use me to go do that, right? And we want to be used of the Lord. But let me ask you a question. If you were to go and ask God, I want to be used of you, Lord, right? And he turns around and he says, okay, great. I want you to occupy the place that Jesus occupied 2,000 years ago. Like, well, I don't want to be used now. Right? But how many of us would go and be ready to say, well, Lord, I wasn't really thinking that way. I wanted to kind of do like a little preaching, you know. I wanted to go and be using, you know, somebody, not like that. Right? But wasn't Jesus being used of the Lord in that very act? And when we look at biblically how that act was described, it was no joke. the torture that he had to go through. But when we look at it, it was for what? A bigger purpose, a bigger reason. He had to sacrifice that incident, but for the bigger purpose and for the bigger reason. And there are things that not that the Lord would want to happen, but there are things that happen. We live in a world that today the enemy is rampant. So because the enemy is rampant, things are going to happen. Me as a man, young boy, molested, I would never want that on my worst enemy. But I've been able to help other men to be set free of the pains that come with that. You see, and when we look at that reality, then this is where we have to understand that sometimes what the enemy intends for negative, God will use you to be able to give a message of hope to someone, to be able to give a message of change and transformation, that if God saw you through your junk and through your mess, that you're giving a message that God can see you through your junk and your mess too. You get what I mean? And that's what this is all about, guys. It's about change, it's about transformation. Next chapter we're going to read is chapter 10, and it's called Loving Well. Let me see. The incarnation, your model for loving well. Make incarnation your model for loving well. Okay? And that's going to be the next chapter, guys. And definitely that one's going to come with a movie that we're also going to play that the book alludes to. And, you know, how many of us were here for The Apostle? The movie The Apostle?
I saw it. I wasn't here.
Amen. So the next one we're going to have is going to be in relation to that part. And the idea with that one is learning how to love people not through your shoes. It's easy to love people through your shoes. It's hard to love people through their shoes. Sometimes to love someone through their shoes is you got to understand where they're at in life. You got to understand where they're going through. Because if you try to love them through your shoes, you just want to bop them right in the nose. Absolutely. But when you are able to look at life through their shoes, you tend to get a little bit more empathetic towards them. Your abilities to love stretches out a little bit more. Your understanding comes out a lot more. If Jesus or God was to love us the way that we act towards Him, it would be a bad situation. I thank God for that John 3:16 verse. Man, because He loved us despite of us. And I thank God for that. Because if it was because of the way I love Him, we'd be in trouble. You get what I'm trying to say? We can be very unfaithful in so many different ways. But thank God that God is not unfaithful to us. So if God can love us in that way, which the Greek term is agape love, meaning unconditional, can we learn to love even our enemies in that unconditional way? That despite of you, I'll still love you. Not because of you, but because God called me to. And it coming from a place of sincerity, it coming from a place of realness, that the message comes across. And that's what that movie's about. It's about a woman that loved a man that had no reason to be loved because he was this bad dude. But repentance came as a result of her love towards him. And that's what we got to get to that place. Amen? We're going to close in prayer. Father, Lord, we just thank you, my God. I thank you for each, Father, Lord, disciple that's here, my God. I thank you for their sharing, my God. I thank you just because, my God, it's just, your Spirit moves, my God, through all of us, my God. I thank you that, Father, Lord, you've affected the atmosphere, my God, with your disciples, my God. And we thank you for your Spirit, Father, Lord, for challenging us to grow daily, Father, Lord. I pray that you take us all home safely, my God, in the same like manner that you bore us to, my God. And we just pray, Father, Lord, you continue to grow us, my God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Greet each other before you go. God bless. See you next week, and we'll give you the date. By the way, for Sunday, we would like everyone to be here nice and early. We're going to have a very important service, which was going to be the vision casting service. So it's going to be sharing a little bit about the direction of the ministry in the next 6 to 12 months, where we're going to be heading, where we're going to be going. We're going to be looking to lift up leaders in this ministry. So again, we want you to understand a little bit of where we're heading and where we're going, so that you get an idea of the direction of things. Amen. God bless. See you on Sunday.
Apostle, what's early?
Just regular church service time. So just if you can get here for the regular church service time.
2:30,
Yeah.
2 o'clock.
So Latinos 2:30, so we can start at 3.
Right.
1:30, so you
I
get
said 2 o'clock.
2:30. 2:30. Ay, Dios mío, no.
I need the 2 o'clock.
You, I gotta tell you one then.
I gotta tell the kids, okay, we gotta go to church on at 12. I'm like, that's right now.
That's right, you better run with them kids. You
I'm telling you.
Dale sigue temprano.
What?
Dile que va a haber papitas.
Gracias, pastor. Some of us are more physical. It comes natural.
Mira, dile que va a haber papitas el domingo. Ellos vienen
God is
de
free. I do food. Anything for peace.
It's hard, but I'll do it. I'll get it to you one day. Thank you so much for my hard work. They're beautiful. Thank you so much. God bless.
It's in the morning. Keep that secret. Now next time, you have a little surprise.
I know. It's like, cute. But I got the best time. Everyone thinks the earth stood still for me. There was an eclipse, so my birthday. So the earth stood still. Everyone was, where is she? Where is she?
Oh,
The earth stood still on my birthday.
you know you won't be here.
I did my follow-up today with the doctor just in case. Today's the best day.
Ella me dijo el sábado, como dijo que no, y luego más otro día. Ok, me dijo que el muchacho. Pero ella después, hoy no quiere quedarse en la casa.
I started Saturday with such
Yo le dije a Marcel, ¿para qué fue eso? Él se puso mal.
You gotta take time off school. When it stops hurting, I don't care.
I have an issue with
It's
child
bird,
abuse.
but
That's all
it's
going on.
Your skin has a fever. All you gotta do
You girls aren't so bad. You girls aren't terrible.
Pero I was confused. I'm like,
I'm sorry.
y él es un niño como envuelto a la zona, que le montó los
Oh, yeah, I have to speak to you. You know what happened? When I first got that but they give you a temporary
Something without
you need to come to wow. They'll mail it to you.
and put the couple in
Start the call. I'll jump on as soon as
So
I
they
can.
give you one that had a little R on it.
That's a gift.
That's the one I have. I have to have the has the R.
Right. You used to use
It's
that?
yellow, but it has the R.
Although
I have
it's
it.
kind of
I lost
offensive
it.
to you now, but also
I looked today, I couldn't find it. And the first time I had it was not this Sunday.
I'm aware of that, though I know. And then I just told him, I was like, how do I do this?
I'm like,
I'm
a soldier with guns.
I twice had that because they sold them for time. They gave me this is the one they
bring solutions to whatever's going on with the
Temporary.
temporary.
with a R.
Mine is yellow and black and red.
Yeah,
You try to sound like someone over here, but I can't go and
And it has a picture of it. I
I'm like,
So what do you have to call
but
to
you
get
know,
that
same
other
stuff.
one?
So I mean,
I'm telling you, I'm like,
Because that's what the guy did. I don't know. That's what they gave it to me. It was Michelle. I was like, yeah. Did you go to the bus? Did you go to the park bus? Because that's where I got it. They have a schedule where they stop in certain places so they can walk and get banned. No, but you can't go straight to
his grandmother is not his boyfriend. They kind of be a little bit they said that for some way that they go, that is still in the law.
Yeah, right. Like, no. I mean, that's a lot of money you're paying. 135. I have SS.
And it's like, it's the opposite. It's completely the opposite. And I was just like, I don't know what to see anymore.
I have to show them this.
Because when I'm concerned about the renewal,
Yeah, to show them this. Once I do
I
that,
don't know.
they look at me and they're like,
Pero ese pone a llorar.
I don't look at them.
Cuando yo llegué a la puerta, ya tú estás llorando.
Yeah, what's wrong? They don't think I don't look like I have been.
And then I have to take los míos también. So hasta los míos, they flinch como ven, they get grounded. Y se pasan el día entero metiendo en cuarto. And I think I try to be nice.
And I spoke to them and I had heard everything, that's why I'm like, you know, maybe they don't want to that's why I'm like,
You don't have IT?
No. And I'm like, and I know the kids come out again. Because cuando ella empezó ahorita hoy, cuando yo me estaba yendo, ella tuvo una
Oh my God. If you go wherever they have the application that they accept it, there. They have you on file. That is true. You ready to go with this? My El Trabajo El.
mismo
always
disco.
coping. And so,
El mismo disco callado. So the
you know,
problem is,
one
you
of
wanna
the
come in
things
and
for
you
me
wanna
where,
like
you know, sometimes I
make
want to
fuss
in the
about
last
stuff
church I was in, I had a
getting
dream.
enojado
I dreamed that I was sitting in the front of the church beside the pastor. And I realized when I was way back there was something like that, when I came back, there were two people in my seat and they refused to leave. And I told them,
I would just
I get you out of the church. Well, you know, two people in the church that could get me, move them out of the church. About 2 months ago, I dreamt that I was being pushed out of this church.
Yeah, let me just tell Eddie to turn
And
it
it's
off,
like
and I think
whenever
he
I
just has
see
to
those
turn that
things,
off.
I know I have to like,
We just gotta turn on this first one.
You know, and it's like whenever I see stuff, I had the dream
Let me
2
just
months ago
talk.
that I was being pushed out of this church. And you know, I wanted to get it, but you know, when I see stuff like that, it always happens. That it, you know, like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Hey Eddie, turn off the
And then
system.
I had something like that again about it.
So the thing is that, ahí es donde
And
está
then
el problema.
I woke up Sunday morning and I had a dream that I saw some people praying. They were like on a little mountain, I went up to pray with them and they just got up and left. It's like I see these things and I pray and I find someone.
No, he's gonna turn off that one,
And I know
because that's that
I
computer.
told Apostle.
So Eddie's gonna
about
turn off that one, that's that
that I dreamt
computer.
that I was like standing
Do I
here
leave this on?
and the podium was
Yeah,
right
you
there.
can leave that
And
computer
the
on, the one I need you to turn off is that one. Yeah, but turn it, can you turn it off, see if that screen is there? Yeah, turn on the bottom one and just turn it off with the mouse there.
And he was just, all the lights were dim, and he was just like standing there overlooking, there was no one there.
And we're gonna get in the trenches with all of them.
It's not, I told her, I don't know if she has seen it, but I did. I
Sunday
think
when we get to
But from the beginning,
you'll understand actually what we're heading to, where we want.
I'm gonna read it again. When I read it, what am I saying about 3 years ago? So what did you have? I just have to read it now. Yeah, I just got to say that you got 2 years. I'm 100% sure I have it.
It's excellent.
One.
Okay, I'm not gonna go to the lights, so like a lot of traffic. Holy Spirit is gonna teach me. I think that you get good.
I do get it. I was at church one time and the pastor was like, Tuesday, everyone, he was looking up, get married to one. And that's the church, I saw things in the spirit that church like never before. And one of the last batches that I saw was talking to him and he was standing here. I saw him. Exact same thing happened in the church, I was at church.
Yeah.
The same when I saw it in the dream. I'm talking to him and he was like, and I'm talking to him and he's just like, he would respond to me. Just like I saw it in the dream, not in the church. So it's like every time I was posting and help, something happens and just like, questions like, okay, how much longer am I gonna be in this church? Because like I said, I don't know the answer.
As far as.
So it's like every time that I'm supposed to put on some places like, what do you want me to do? It's like,
Pero no es que es calidad, desde donde
and then the worst part about it, I keep getting thinking about my sister and I'm telling her now, I won't get upset.
Yo sinceramente no sé. Yo le dije a ella que hablara.
Previous to one, I had a dream that she and I were like, it's like in a compound like this in Africa. It was like a big yard after there was like a hut. And there was a brown cat. And the cat kept springing at me. And I just was with my right shoe. Every time the cat came at me, I was sure like hit it. It was like a tennis. And every time, you know, this kid jumping and and I just kept beating him like crazy with the shoe. But he kept coming and coming and coming. And the next thing I know, it's like someone pulled me into the hut. And the place was in all darkness. So it's like, the cat couldn't get at me. Then I heard my sister, she started screaming, the cat started
So when you guys
screaming.
go tomorrow? You guys go tomorrow?
So it's just like too much in
And I was like,
how was it happening?
I don't know.
I don't know.
So question.
Once the deliverance is expected,
What's the other
you will understand overall what you have
En
to
el
do.
resto de los celos,
You have not.
No, yo digo.
o como que
Maybe
that personalized family. I want to say
That and what I've been
but I'm expecting some contrary, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm just
That's it.
optimistic.
Your blood is good.
Oh my God, I don't know. Okay, and una vez la dijo una cosa, porque talking about muchachos,
above me, it's like, it's just very extremely wide open. And nothing without that. But again, without perspective, without understanding, without some level of direction, like you do. So I don't.
Yo no sé de niño,
I feel like I'm right now, right now, I found a church that they just exactly they had deliverance on right now. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm like, it's like God. What am I saying? I agree. Thank you. Are you working tomorrow?
Because I told him that he's been with y'all long term. He's been with y'all long term.
Oh, you have the you need the real thing. You know, just like you have the real aloe, right? Not the real thing. No, you need the real thing. You need the real aloe. Yeah, you need the real thing.
Eso no son juegos, tú me entiendes.
Yeah, the real thing is just like, you know, cut it and then just, you know, tie it underneath the slime and stuff. The gel doesn't work. I have the gel. The gel. But you need to stay home a couple of days. It's going to be hot tomorrow. Yeah, you need to stay home.
I just didn't want my son to get mad.
He's so
No,
smart.
pero I told him.
No, but I'm doing because you bought it.
Oh no, I told him.
Your face is hurt. That's your feet. But your face is hurt.
But you said, Steve, it's true. I tell him all the time. I'm like, I don't know if he did it, but I feel that.
But your face is very burnt.
And this yeah.
There have to be some kind of cream mold so that you just like, you know, slather on, you know, just slather on it. But you can need the real aloe. You need the real thing. Yeah, the gel is not going to do it. You guys went yesterday, right? Yesterday. Was it very hot outside yesterday? Yeah, when you're in the water, you never, you know, what's the
attention from one person that is not only for him, it's for, you know.
Yeah, you have days I think you should take off a day or two from one just to, you know, do that.
You ready?
I'm ready. But I drove tonight.
Entonces, ese puso.
Oh,
Ese puso.
Okay.
I'm working on the way down.
Okay.